بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I thank Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala for the ni'mah of Islam. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in at-taqwa, piety, and as-sabr, patience, al-ilm, practice, al-wara', al-ilm, knowledge, al-wara', scrupulousness, al-amal, practice, and at-taqarrub, and have us draw closer to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala fi lutfin wa afiyah, in gentleness and well-being. May Allah grant us the sincere intention. Inshallah, we're going to continue where we left off yesterday in the book Mafahim Yajibu an Tusahhaha, notions that need to be corrected. And we talked about Haqiqatul Ash'ira, the reality of the Ash'aris. And we left off with Sayyid al-Imam Muhammad Alawi al-Maliki when they were relating a statement of Ibn Taymiyyah in his Al-Fatawa. And that's a long discussion, but I wanted to clarify generally the position of the majority of the scholars of about Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah, who died in the year 728 AH. Ibn Taymiyyah, he was an individual who lived in the 8th century. He was originally, or he was from, a family of noble, knowledgeable Hanbali scholars in Damascus, Syria. And he was, in the beginning of his career as a scholar, very well-liked among the Hanabila, very studious, great, vast amount of knowledge in all of the Islamic sciences. But later in his affair, he became a figure that had ideas that contradicted the majority of the Muslim nation, to the point that the great Hafiz Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, rahimahullah ta'ala, said that Ibn Taymiyyah, he contradicted the scholarly consensus of the Muslims in around 60 issues. Some of those issues in belief, and some of those issues in jurisprudence. So Ibn Taymiyyah, his issue was like Al-Hafiz al-Iraqi said about him, rahimahullah, He said, علمه أكبر من عقله. علمه أكبر من عقله. His knowledge was far greater than his intellect. And by that meaning, he had so much knowledge of the transmitted text, a great memorizer of hadith and the different sciences of the Arabic language. He had a lot of information. Ilmuhu, his knowledge. Akbaru min aqlihi. But knowledge he had, his intellect didn't match his knowledge. So therefore, he fell into many problematic issues by relying so much on the transmitted text, its literal interpretation, and leaving off the sound mind. So he came up with ideas that the sound mind won't accept by his literal interpretation of the text. Among them is ascribing to Allah attributes that reach the level of blasphemy, like ascribing to Allah a location, a direction, literal movement from place to place, indicating that Allah is not beyond being a body, and many, 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 many other deviant ideas that he had. So what our scholars and the majority of the scholars of Ahl Sunnah, though they recognized his level of knowledge and his scholarship and even his outward piety, they rejected his innovations in creed and practice, in aqidah, in al-fiqh. And as our teacher said about him, his example is to show us that a person may be extremely talented and gifted in one field, yet suffer from radical deficiencies in another. So the summary of Ibn Taymiyyah is that he's not one who is relied upon by the majority of scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. The only ones you will find relying on the statements of Ibn Taymiyyah in creed and in practice are those people who follow the madhab of the Wahhabiyya or have ideas that are consistent with the school of the Wahhabi movement. So for us, we don't want to get into a deep research into Ibn Taymiyyah and all his sayings. Sufficient is to know that the scholars of Ahl Sunnah have not accepted his deviations in creed and practice. And you will not find among the Hanafis, the Malikis, the Shafi'is, and even the noble Hanbalis relying on the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah in creed and other ideas that he had. And maybe in the future, we'll go in more detail about those mistakes and errors, some of them even reaching to the level of disbelief for the one who believes them from Ibn Taymiyyah. We will talk about that. But for the purpose of me mentioning him here is that he's mentioned in our text, and I didn't want people to take from that he's to be relied upon in issues of creed and even in issues of practice. What one day I will do is I will go over many of the cases where he contradicted the scholarly consensus so that you will see. But for right now, let us continue with our text. I hope, did everyone understand what I just said about Ibn Taymiyyah? Because I don't want anyone to be deluded. Did everyone understood what I mentioned? Not what you want me to mention, what I mentioned. Did you understand clearly what I mentioned? Please answer me. Was it clear? And there is a point to know. We can practice our religion without mentioning Ibn Taymiyyah at all. So he shouldn't be our concentration, right? We can practice the deen with never mentioning Ibn Taymiyyah, and it wouldn't hurt us any, right? We don't even have to mention his name. But as I told you yesterday, Sayyid Muhammad Alawi al-Maliki was in a different world. And I know that world, a different world. So he had to do what he had to do. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him for his efforts. Now, go ahead. Can you type all that you said? Yeah, right. Go ahead, Muti.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, "The scholars are the helpers of the religious sciences, and the asharis are the helpers of the fundamentals of the religion. They include whole sections of the foremost imams of hadith, sacred law, and Quranic exegesis. Sheikh al-Islam Ahmed B. Hajar al-Asqalani, the mentor of the scholars of hadith and author of the book Fat al-Bari fil Sharh Sahih al-Bukhari, which not a single scholar can dispense with, was an ashari."
Here, so he mentioned that the scholars of hadith after the time of Imam al-Ash'ari and the fuqaha, the majority of the fuqaha, scholars of fiqh. So you have scholars of hadith, scholars of fiqh. Al-Mufassirun, the scholars of tafsir. All of them, those great imams, they were among the Ash'ariyah. They were Ash'aris, right? Following the methodology of Al-Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. And to give you example, among the great scholars of hadith was Shaykh al-Islam Ahmed ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. Ahmed ibn Hajar, I mentioned him to you the other day. Ahmed ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. He died in the year 852 after Hijrah. He was the famous commentator on Sahih al-Bukhari. He was an Ash'ari. And if you read his book, his book has many cases to show his applying the methodology of the Ash'ariyah, meaning a ta'wil in some cases, a tafweed in some cases, and he was Shafi'i and madhab, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Now,
The Sheikh of the scholars of Ahl Sunnah, Imam an-Nawawi, author of Sharh Sahih Muslim and many other famous works, was an ashari.
Here, then he mentioned before Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani was Imam an-Nawawi. Imam an-Nawawi, he died in the year 676 after Hijrah, so he was before Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, and he was everyone knows Imam an-Nawawi like no one. He's one whom almost if you talk about Islam and you don't talk about Imam an-Nawawi, no one's really going to pay you much attention. Imam an-Nawawi was an Ash'ari, and he lived in Damascus. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he lived in Egypt, and they followed the methodology of those great scholars of hadith that were before them who were among the Ash'ariyah. Now,
The master of Quranic exegesis, Imam al-Qurtubi, author of Al-Jami li Ahkam al-Quran, was an ashari.
so then you have among the great imams from the Maliki school was the great Imam al-Qurtubi. And Imam al-Qurtubi, he was among the famous mufassirun, scholars of Quran, and among the most famous books in riwayah, in narration, in terms of explaining the Quran, is Al-Jami li Ahkam al-Quran, written by Imam al-Qurtubi. And Imam al-Qurtubi was an Ash'ari. I want to point you to something. Among the three most well-known books of tafsir that are by way of riwayah, narration, and explaining the Quran by narrations from the Prophet ﷺ or the companions or those after them, are Tafsir al-Tabari, Tafsir al-Qurtubi, and Tafsir Ibn Kathir. And those books, all of them, you will find ta'wil, which is a position of the Ash'ira, and you will find a tafweed in every one of those main books that are used. The funny thing, if you read the Noble Quran, that English translation that was put out by the Wahhabiyya, they put on the cover, this is a summarization of Sahih Bukhari, Tafsir al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, and al-Qurtubi. And if you read what they put in that book, that English translation of Tashbih, liken Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to his creation, at-Tajsim, giving Allah bodily attributes, literalism, anthropomorphism that is contained in that English translation, and you read those same passages from the original books, you see a complete different approach, which is quite bad that you're saying you're translating a book, but you summarizing, but the points that differ from your false aqidah you left out as if they didn't say it. And you blame those who said it, and the very ones you quoting are the ones who said what you said is kufr or shirk or bid'ah. Now,
Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, who wrote al-Zawajir
الزواجر
Zawajir عن اقتراف الكبائر, was an Ashari.
Ibn Hajar, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, he was a latter Shafi'i scholar, and for the latter Shafi'i school, he is among the reliable scholars for fatwa. So in the Shafi'i school, we have the reliable opinion in the school is what was mentioned by Imam al-Nawawi and Imam al-Rafi'i. After them, the reliable opinion of the later scholars is the opinion of Ibn Hajar al-Haytami and Imam al-Ramli. And Imam Ibn Hajar, he has his famous book, Tuhfatul Mu'taj, and he was Ash'ari in creed. And he mentioned many of the deviations of Ibn Taymiyyah, and his book, Az-Zawajir and Iqtiraf al-Kaba'ir, is a 2-volume book that tells you about the major sins that you need to avoid, but he counts so many sins in that book. Unfortunately, as far as I know, it's not translated in English, but we will, in future classes, be reading from this book because it is an extremely important book that you learn to remove yourself away from things that are counted among the muhlikat, those ruinous characteristics and those sins that will cause you destruction. But Al-Hafidh Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, he's also a famous commentator on the Arba'in of Imam al-Nawawi and many other beneficial books that he wrote. He was Ash'ari in creed.
The Sheikh of Sacred Law and Hadith, the reliable proof, Zakaria al-Ansari, was an Ashari.
Al-Imam al-Sheikh Zakaria al-Ansari, he died in the year 926 after Hijrah. I want you to pay attention. Zakaria al-Ansari, he was known as Shaykh al-Islam, one of the great scholars of Egypt in his time, the leading scholar in his time among many great scholars. He lived at the same time of Imam al-Suyuti, and he was a student of Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. Zakaria al-Ansari, he was a Shafi'i faqih, he was Ash'ari in creed, he was Sufi. And what is interesting is that people that mention their chains of narration, if you look at those chains of narration, among the main reliable scholars in all those chains is Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari. And he was Ash'ari, no doubt, in creed. He was a Sufi, no doubt. He has a commentary on the Risala of Imam al-Qushayri in Tasawwuf. He has all of his books. You read them, you will see the madhab of al-Ash'ari. And he is all of the chains going back to al-Bukhari, all of the most authentic, reliable chains, they go through his route, through the route of his students, or through the route of his teachers. Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari. And here, for sufficient for us, is to the point that is really we should concentrate here, is when you look at our tradition, the scholars of Islam, you will see that there was a certain trend among the majority scholars of the religion. There's always been individuals who deviated from the path of the majority. There's always been rare opinions, right? And that's fine. It exists. It's the nature of study and learning. However, what we're asking the people to do and what we should be pushing them is to follow a path that is known and accepted and safe over the ages. Not these splinter ideas that some one figure came up, or two figures, or a group of people whom the majority of the scholars didn't accept their opinion. That's not the way of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Naam, go ahead.
Imam Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, Imam Asqalani,
Al-Qastalani.
Asqalani, Imam Nasafi,
Nasafi.
so sorry.
Don't worry.
Imam,
we need to get to know all these scholars. Imam al-Baqillani, he was a Maliki scholar, and he wrote many good books in Aqidah, in talking about the belief. He was Ash'ari. He had his own, sometimes, his own ijtihad in different issues, but overall, he was an Ash'ari, and he defended the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So you would have these, beware of these modern day Wahhabis. I'm telling you, they are slick. Because once they get found out is Wahhabi, then they change Salafi, then they change Athari, then they change old-time Hanbali. Beware of these games. They're like the, just every time they get identified, they switch to something else. Get identified, switch to something else. These name games, forget the names. Get to know the principles, right? Get to know the principles. Allah is not like his creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in a place, a location, a direction. Allah doesn't have organs and limbs. No matter what name you use to try to push that belief, it's going to be rejected. Whether you call it Wahhabi, Salafi, Athari, Hanbali, I don't care what you call it. It is tashbih wa tajsim. It is liking Allah to his creation and giving him attributes of bodies, which Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah does not accept. You cannot change the name and figure we're not going to recognize you. The same person is the same person. Whether you got on a red suit, a blue suit, a green suit, a white suit, you are you. And all you got to do is explain that belief and articulate it, and you're going to be identified as who you are. Al-Mujassima wal-Mushabbiha. Those who like Allah to his creation and give him attributes of bodies. Whether you are in the early days, in the middle days, or in our days. You are who you are. Naam.
Imam al-Shirbini,
Ashirbini. You
Abu
can't mess
Hayyan,
that name up. That's my heart. Al-Imam al-Khatib al-Shirbini. Now I'm messing with you. Go ahead.
Abu Hayyan,
He was a great Shafi'i scholar, and he was at the rank of the same time of Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, Imam al-Ramli, and Khatib Shi, because these three books in the Shafi'i school, in the latter Shafi'i school, you have Tuhfatul Muhtaj by Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, you have Nihayatul Muhtaj by Imam al-Ramli, and you have Mughni al-Muhtaj by Imam al-Khatib al-Shirbini. Now,
Abu Hayyan al-Tawhidi, author of the Quranic commentary Al-Bahr al-Muhit,
and Abu Hayyan al-Nahwi, he was a famous scholar of tafsir, but this tafsir al-Bahr al-Muhit, he was Ash'ari, but it's also very rich in the Arabic language and shows you how the Arabic language relates a lot to the explanation of Quran. All of these were Ash'ari. And why Imam Sayyid Muhammad al-Alawi al-Maliki is mentioning all of these, because when you say the Ash'aris are deviant, these are the people you're talking about. And these are the people who all of them rely on to quote when they want to learn about tafsir, when they want to learn about the Quran, when they want to learn about hadith, when they want to learn about the seerah, when they want to learn about any science. The major books that they use are the Ash'ari. Yet they use all of their scholarship and consider them deviant, mushriks, idol worshippers, grave worshippers, saint worshippers, wal-iyadu billah. But that's their claim. But you cannot live without our books. La ilaha illallah. You heard what I said? We don't need to mention Ibn Taymiyyah at all. We don't need to rely on his books at all, right? We don't need to quote him. We don't need any of that. But you cannot say the same about all of the scholars of the Ash'ari. Now,
Imam Ibn Juzay, author
Ibn
of
Juzay.
Juzay, author of At-Tashil fi Ulum at-Tanzil,
Yes.
and others. All of these were imams of the Ash'aris.
I'll tell you a story why it's important to learn with a teacher. So we were studying this tafsir at Tashil fi Ulum at-Tanzil with Sheikh Samir. And this is when we were studying this book. I mean, many times I saw his scholarship and I was amazed, right? And from stories that others told me about him, you know, with their experiences, right? But when we were studying this book, the copies we had were had a lot of printing errors in them, a whole lot. And so while we were reading this book with the sheikh, he didn't have a book. He was just listening. And as we were reading, it seemed like every other line he was correcting. No, that's a mistake. That's wrong. It should say this. It should say this. And we kept reading. We go to one page, 2 page, and every page he would pick up 5, 6 mistakes, right? Then we went through the book a little while, and we end up stopping like, Sheikh, this book has too many errors. Why don't you just do it from your mind? Like, subhanAllah. I was like blown away, like names, words, he was just catching it. And when we got a new print that got published later that had less mistakes, those things that the sheikh had in his mind were in that book. And we was looking at both like, wow, right? And actualization of the concept, knowledge is what is contained in the heart, not in the pages of books. Blew us away. And then not the first time we've seen him do things like that. But with this book, every time I hear the tafsir of Ibn Juzay, I think about those sessions. Amazing memory, right? So that not only was he a master in Quran, but also the understanding of the Quran. Not only a master in hadith, but the understanding of hadith, right? And La ilaha illallah. May Allah bless Sayyidi Sheikh Samir. He is among the rare Jews in our time, like the old scholars. Naam. Go
If
ahead.
we wanted to name all of the top scholars of hadith, Quranic exegesis, and sacred law who were imams of the Ash'aris, we would be hard pressed to do so, and it would require volumes to merely list these virtuous figures, whose knowledge has filled the earth from east to west.
And here I want you to point that he's mentioning, if you talk about the scholars of hadith, if you talk about the scholars of tafsir, if you talk about the scholars of fiqh, the scholars of Arabic language, the scholars of the seerah of the Prophet, the scholars who wrote about uh, the uh, the Shama'il of the Prophet and explain these books, the scholars in spirituality, the scholars in almost every science of Islam, you will find that the leading scholars of every field were the Ash'ari. In any field you study, if you study the scholars who were the head scholars of any field in any Islamic science, you will find that they were Ash'ari. This is a known fact that only one who would deny it is a flat out liar. No other way to describe them that would deny this fact. And all you got to do is study the biography and the books of these scholars, and you will see that this was the case. This was what was conveyed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah for the past 1200 years. Now,
It is obligatory upon us to give credit where credit is due, and recognize the merit of those of knowledge and virtue who have served the sacred law of the greatest messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What good is to be hoped for us if we level our foremost scholars and righteous predecessors with charges of deviance and misguidance? How should Allah Ta'ala give us the benefit of their
and this is
scholarship?
the point. If we're going to say, and this is what we say, when they say, beware, there's the other thing they'll say, oh, we accept the Ash'aris. But every time they talk about deviant people, they put the Ash'ari in it. You know, it's a game. But here's the point. Forget the name Ash'ari if that bothers you, right? That's not obligatory to be, I'm an Ash'ari. That's not the obligation. The obligation is to have the correct belief. Don't get lost in names. Forget the name. Okay, we don't want to say I'm Ash'ari, right? Do I carry the correct conviction of Islam? Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the vast majority of them who hold that correct conviction were named Ash'ari in following that methodology. The object is to have the correct creed. Don't worry about the title so much. Worry about the correct creed. If you know the correct creed, the title will become insignificant. The title is only to point you to the methodology of the correct creed. So this idea of making it sound like we Crips and Bloods, no. That's simplifying the issue. Forget the name. Let's not say Ash'ari, right? Let's not say Wahhabi. Let's not say Salafi. Let's not say Shi'i. Let's forget all the names. What is the religion that Sayyiduna Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam conveyed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah revealed, and that the companions and all of the Muslims before said? Did the Muslims, past and present, believe that Allah was a body with limbs and organs and locations and direction and movement? No, that's the answer. Does the Quran tell us to liken Allah to his creation in meaning or in wording? No. Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala order us to compare his holy essence to the hands of a clock or of human beings or of any other creation? No. So if you understand the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, someone who tells you that Allah is in heaven, no matter what he calls himself, this is not befitting. So according to the Quran, because you misunderstand and literally interpret the Quran in a way that is not befitting, That's not accepted, no matter what you call it. So don't forget the point. What that term Ashari or Maturidi is to show you that proper creed. That's it. So don't get into, because people get lost in names. And that's designed to weaken your understanding. Oh, just all these names, can't we just be Muslim? They are Muslim, but it's identifying a methodology. So when you say, I'm nothing but a Muslim, you still got to have the correct belief. What do you mean you're a Muslim? Are you a Muslim who say, I worship the sun? No, right? No. And you are Muslim because you have a certain creed, a certain aqidah, a certain belief that is commanded in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and that was conveyed from generation to generation. That's the important thing. And when we say Ash'ari and Maturidi, we're only talking about that. So if we get rid of the name, and I'm not saying get rid of the name, I'm saying for the purpose for you to understand, because it's not about the name. The name is only pointing to a thing, a methodology, an understanding, a belief system. Do you know the belief system? Right? I remember, to give you a story by way of analogy. You know, I'm in a community, we're filled with Pakistanis and Bengalis and African Americans too, mixture, right? But a lot of people who say I'm Hanafi, and they come to me all the time in the masjid. We're Hanafi. And I say, okay, what did you study in the Hanafi school? Silence. What did you study in the Hanafi school? What Hanafi books have you studied? What Hanafi teachers you study with? Nothing. So how you Hanafi? And do you know that what you're doing is not the Hanafi school? That's Wahhabism that you're doing. Hanafis don't pray like that. That's not a Hanafi fiqh ruling. That's a Wahhabi fiqh ruling. How are you Hanafi? That is not the Hanafi school. And none of the Hanafi books. What do I mean? Because they got a title and they don't understand what it means. So they say, I'm Hanafi, but they don't know what it is to be Hanafi. They don't know anything about the Hanafi school. And it's like that in other madhahib. I'm not picking at the Hanafi school. So common people, don't get caught up on names. Learn the matter that you're talking about. It's just like saying I'm a lawyer, but you don't know how to do law. Or I'm a doctor and you don't know how to practice medicine. Or I'm a pharmacist and you don't know nothing about different types of medicine. Or I'm an engineer and you can't put a car together or a bridge together, depending what kind of engineer you are. You can have the title, but you know what you're doing. What significance is it? So likewise, you can say you're Ash'ari, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki. If you don't know the school, it doesn't matter. It's just a claim that has no weight. Learn the content, right? Learn the content. And the content of the belief of Ahl Sunnah is that Allah doesn't resemble his creation in no way. And I don't care what title you put on it, but if you liken Allah to his creation, you are misguided, you are following the wrong path, and you may reach the level of kufr. So don't get into the point where we're saying that, no, let nobody play that game with you. That is a game. Don't pay attention to the title. What are you trying to tell me? You switch your name, but you're trying to tell me the same thing. Allah is like his creation. Of course not. No one's going to accept that. But if you switch names and use fancy titles and la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, don't fall for it. Naam, go ahead.
How should Allah Ta'ala give us the benefit of their scholarship if we believe it is deviance and departure from the way of Islam? I ask you, is there a single Islamic scholar of the present day among all the PhDs and geniuses who has done what Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani or Imam al-Nawawi have done in service to the pure prophetic sunnah? How can we dare charge them and all Ash'aris with deviance when it is we who are in need of their scholarship?
Here, I want you to think about this. This is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful point that Sayyid Muhammad Alawi al-Maliki has mentioned. If you take all the doctors, no doctor in Islam, because it used to be sheikh. Now you're not a sheikh unless you doctor sheikh. No, doctor sheikh, right? Back in when we were learning, just sheikh. Now it's got to have doctor first. Doctor sheikh. I got a PhD from some school somewhere. Alhamdulillah. But if you put all these doctors together, all these intelligent people, put them all together, and you can just take the work of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani in hadith and the works of Imam al-Nawawi, and none of them have done the like. None of them. All of them rely on their books, but they're deviant, right? They got bad aqidah. He was confused about the religion. But you are in need of their scholarship, and they have no need of nothing you wrote. Think about that. You can't even write without referring to their works. No one is going to pay you no attention if you don't refer to their works. But they were deviant in Aqidah because they were Ash'ari. They believed that Allah was not like his creation. They made figurative interpretation. They made at-tawassul by the Prophet. They made at-tabarruk. They have all that in their books. And they are deviant, grave worshippers, misguided. But you, who need them, are the guided people, the saved group who come to rectify Islam from all the confusion and grave worshiping. And tell that to somebody who don't have an intellect. That doesn't make any sense. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And when you see the level of these scholars like Imam al-Nawawi and Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani and al-Qurtubi and Ibn Hajar al-Haytham and Zakaria al-Ansari and al-Qastalani and al-Baqilani and Nasafi, Shirbini, Abu Hayyan al-Andalusi, Ibn Jawzay, and all of those other great scholars, when you read about them and see their level of knowledge and compare it to the people who's talking today, you'll be like, would you please go lay down? Really? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Go ahead.
How can we take knowledge from them if they were in error? For as Imam al-Zuhri said, this knowledge is religion, so look well to see from whom you are taking your
That
religion.
shouldn't say Zuhri, that should say Ibn Sirin. It says a Zuhri.
Yes, it says Imam al-Zuhri.
It should say Imam Ibn Sirin. It should say Ibn Sirin, not Az-Zuhri. And Az-Zuhri may have repeated what Ibn Sirin mentioned, but this statement is famous from Ibn Sirin. It is in the introduction of Sahih Muslim. Ibn Sirin, he said, Inna hadha al-ilm deen fanzuru amman ta'khudhuna deenakum. Verily, this religion, this knowledge you're learning is the religion, so look well from whom you take your religion. That is mentioned in the introduction of Sahih Muslim from the route of Ibn Sirin. But there may be a statement from Az-Zuhri similar to that, but what is mentioned in the Arabic text is Ibn Sirin.
Is it not sufficient for someone opposed to the Ash'aris to say, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon them, they used their best efforts, ijtihad, in figuratively interpreting the divine attributes, which it would have been fitter for them not to do, instead of accusing them of deviance and misguidance, or showing anger towards whoever considers them to be from Ahl Sunnah.
And you know, these guys is funny. I mean, right? They call you a deviant. They say your blood is lawful. And then say, but we can get along. And we accept you. We count you, despite your deviance, among the Muslims. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Subhanallah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Go ahead.
If Imams al-Nawawi, al-Asqalani, al-Qurtubi, al-Baqilani, Fakhr ad-Din al-Razi, al-Haytami, Zakaria al-Ansari, and many others were not among the most brilliant scholars and illustrious geniuses or from Ahl Sunnah, then who are Ahl Sunnah?
That's the point. If you're going to say all of our scholars in the Today, we're in the 15th century. The majority of the scholars around the world are deviant, misguided, grave worshippers, ignorant of Allah's attributes. In the 14th century, it was the same. In the 13th century, the 12th century, 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, and then the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st century, they were quote unquote Salafi, and everybody else deviated from them, and they were all misguided, and all of them were on shirk and kufr and bid'ah. And if their works, whom we all need, they're not Ahl Sunnah, they're not the people of guidance, then who's Ahl Sunnah? I mean, really, who's Ahl Sunnah? Who's left? You wiped out the whole ummah. Who's left? Who's left? Oh, so we're left with your handful of scholars in our time. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab in the 13th century, Ibn Qayyim and Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah and Ibn Taymiyyah in the 8th century. Skip everybody else. The Mushabbiha among the Hanabila and Mujassima in Baghdad in the 3rd and 2nd centuries, and everyone else misguided deviants. Out of the millions and hundreds of millions of Muslims and scholars that have come over 15 generations, all of them were misguided because they were blind following of madhabs, and they were Asharis and Maturidis and Sufis, and they were just all misguided. And we came to save and revive Islam, and no one knew proper Islam before we came. Okay. MashaAllah. All right. I'm sorry. It is hilarious for someone to give you that assertion. You can twist it, you can color it up however you want. That's the bottom line when we get to the end of it. All the Muslims were misguided until we came. And those who thought like us. And even if it's one of us, we're the Jama'ah, we're the community. We're the majority of the Muslim nation, even if it's one of us. We're not that stupid. I'm sorry. We're just not that dumb. Right? We're not. I'm sorry. It doesn't work. And if I could give my last breath to educate people in general, but specifically my people, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show them the books. I'm going to introduce them to the scholars. I'm going to make sure they know where to find the true scholarship in Islam. They're going to see the references. They're going to see the books, and they're going to catch your games. You can forget about it. I've been giving my life. Anyone who knows me, I've been giving my life to this. We're just going to keep going and keep going and keep going. Because this is a tragedy. We've been through slavery. We've been through Jim Crow, segregation. We've been through so much and still going through white supremacy. We ain't going to get deceived in Islam too. Nah, we're not going for it. Sorry, them days is up. Cancel your contract with the black community. You done. You're not spreading that stuff no more. Go ahead.
I sincerely invite all who call others to this religion or who work in the field of invitation Islam to fear Allah Ta'ala regarding the honor of the community of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, especially with respect to its noble scholars and most choice jurists. The Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is possessed of goodness until the final hour, and we shall be bereft of any good if we fail to acknowledge the worth and excellence of our learned.
And that's really, if we're going to say the people who conveyed this religion to us, the people who did all their work, spend their lives in sifting through the hadith reports and organizing them and arranging them and putting them in the structure where we can learn and all of the science. If we want to say all of them are misguided, honestly, man, what's left? Like all that, you ain't even doing 10% of their work. You don't even have 5% of their knowledge. And you want to criticize them as misguided. Come on, man. What good is left in us? If all of our ones who conveyed our religion is all deviants, then what kind of religion do we have? The people who conveyed your religion, you said they're all misguided. They don't even know what they're doing. They don't even know how to believe in God properly. And they was the ones who conveyed your religion. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Allahumma ighfir qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. Oh Allah, forgive my people because they don't know. La ilaha illallah. We'll stop here, inshallah. I'll take questions. La ilaha illallah. I'm not going to be on this all day. As I'm waiting for everyone, inshallah, this week we'll start Sunnah at-Tawfiq. But we have to learn. And if you learn, this stuff is easy. It's not like complicated. They want you to think it's complicated to deter you from learning, right? They don't want you to learn. Oh, don't go into these details. Just believe in Allah. But you telling me Allah got hands and limbs and organs and you confused and it doesn't matter. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. When you say amantu billah, I believe in Allah, that means something. You can't just say I believe in Allah and whatever I believe about Allah is valid. No. I believe in Allah has a meaning, and it has things that you must know about Allah. And there's things that you cannot believe about Allah. There are things that are necessary to ascribe to Allah. There are things that are impossible to ascribe to Allah. You cannot just say, I believe in Allah, and it don't matter how I believe. This doesn't even make sense. They don't even say that, but they will tell us that. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And I try, and I want to speak something to you, just quickly. Alhamdulillah, I don't have in my family no Salafi Wahhabis. Alhamdulillah, right? I have people I know that are. I don't have family members like that. So I don't have that, because it's my family, I'm struggling, right? I have people I know and I like, and they're good people that may have that, but we are good people, so we talk. We have real conversations, right? It's my people, right? They come, I grew up in the projects. I grew up in the hood, and where that stuff flourished, that's where I move at, right? So, of course, I know a bunch of people that have those ideas, but they know me. We talking, right? We're going to have a conversation because I love you. I know you don't got it. I know you confused. I know you ain't even thinking about some of the stuff you saying. So we gonna kick it. Real talk, as they say. We gonna drop your pride out. You ain't that tough anyway. Let's talk, right? We gonna have a real talk. I'm not trying to hurt you, and I know you're not trying to hurt me, right? We brothers, we sisters. Let's talk. A real talk. Because I know when you talk and you listen to what you're saying, you're not going to agree with that yourself. No Muslim who wants to be Muslim is going to say Allah is like what they describe him. Even the one who is saying it, if you talk to them and they use their mind and don't get fanatical and don't get arrogant and don't run away from issues, what you're saying, you're going to say you're not saying that. Come on. This stuff don't even make no sense. No one is saying that. But if you're not talking to no one and you're just repeating and you're not using your intellect and you're just quoting narrations and worse, translating those narrations into English and taking meanings in English and just corrupt Aqidah, right? You know the summation of what you're saying? Listen to this. This is the summation of what you're saying. And I know you're going to say I'm not saying that, so I'm saying don't say it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existed before all the creation. This is what they are saying in reality. Listen to their aqidah. Allah existed And there was nothing else, no creation, nothing, just Allah. Tayyib. Then he created the creation. And among the creation is the throne, which is a big throne. It is physical. It is a body. It exists. It's created. And then he rose above that throne. And that's where he's at. Some say sitting, like Ibn Taymiyyah put in his books. Some say rose above. He's in some space between him and the throne. And then that's where he at. And he only moves from the heaven to above the throne to the lowest heaven on the last third of the night and the day of Arafat. And you must literally believe that. So he's above the throne, then he comes down because the throne is above, and then you have paradise, and then you have the heavens, the seven heavens, and then the heaven of the earth. And he moves through all of the skies, through paradise, and then he squeezes through the angels, because there's no place in the heaven except the four fingers, except there's an angel prostrating. So the heavens is filled with angels, and this God that they imaginally believe comes through all that and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks so he can be at the lowest heaven. And then on the day of judgment, he's going to be above his throne, and he's going to put his foot literally all the way through the paradise, through the heavens, through the earth, onto the hellfire. Would you knock it off, man? Really? And, you know, he has two hands, because two right hands, because the left hand is unbefitting, and he has a face, and he has a shin, but, you know, and feet, and you see how silly that is? And they won't even say it. So then it's not literal. It's not literal. It's other than what we imagine. Right. So stop telling us that stuff. It's not literal. You don't even believe that. And that's you didn't say that. I know no one would say that because it's stupid. So don't try to indicate that. Muslims don't imagine Allah because Allah is not like anything in the creation. Do you understand that? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. My people ain't that dumb to believe some nonsense like that. I have to be explicit so you understand what they're trying to tell you. And if they're not telling you that, then don't say it. Fine. Don't say it. And the trick, all that is real, we just don't know how. Even if we don't know how, it's real, and it's still not befitting. And that's why Ahl Sunnah don't say how about Allah and his attributes. La ilaha illallah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. You got grown men. Santa Claus is more plausible than that nonsense. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. La ilaha illallah. Ya Rab. And we want to call Christians and Jews to that. What's the difference? That's what we want to tell they'll laugh at us. That's why Trump goes to your lands and laughs at you. To your lands. Because he knows your stuff is silly. And tells you change your curriculum. Leave that nonsense. Just take out the terrorism. We're going to make Saudi Arabia great again. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. But I'll take the questions. I'm sorry. His knowledge does not match his intellect. Let me see if I can put my Arabic up here. علمه أكبر أكبر من عقله. That's what Hafid al-Iraqi said about him. He said about Ibn Taymiyyah, ilmuhu akbaru min aqlihi. I'm sorry. He said, ilmuhu akbaru min aqlihi. His knowledge is greater than his intellect. Ilmuhu akbaru min aqlihi. Naam. Al-Hafid al-Iraqi said that about Ibn Taymiyyah. Al-Hafid al-Iraqi was the Sheikh of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, the author of Fathul Bari. Okay, next. That's it. Oh, it's all political and power and money and control. That's what pushes those beliefs. If you just study history and you see how the Saudi Arabian kingdom was established and what their concept was and how they worked with the British to overthrow the Ottoman Empire, that's all political. And Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, he was the religious side of it, and the Saud family was the political side. They came together with the help of the British, and they wiped out the Ottoman Empire and the Muslim scholars all in Mecca and Medina and established their kingdom. And we're still living with the traces of that today. But just like America did to the Native Americans, Saudi Arabia and the Saud family with the family of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab and the help of the British did to the Muslims. And we're still suffering from it today. So same thing. So do you wonder how we got in power in this country? We wiped out the natives, accused them of being savages and uncultured and took their land. You know, same thing. The same thing they did in America, they do around the world everywhere. It's the same stuff. And like I tell people sometimes, because we benefit from injustice, don't change that it's injustice. Because we benefit from injustice doesn't change the fact that it's injustice. Trust me, if it wasn't for America and Europe, there would be no Saudi Arabia. Not even today. Not even today. The thing that keeps them floating, that's why they buy billions of weapons from America, is because without America, they would be gone. The whole Muslim world would immediately remove them from power the next day. Soon as America took their hands off Saudi Arabia, those Saud family would be gone. In hours, they would be out. And that would be the end of Wahhabism. Wahhabism is being supported by the political aims of the West. If that was gone, you won't hear Wahhabism within 10 hours. They would be gone. Why need mention Sheikh Abdullah al-Harari? Was he the only scholar who exposed the Mujassima and the likes of Ibn Taymiyyah? No. He only quoted from scholars before him. So there's no need. What about As-Subki? What about Taqiyuddin al-Husni? What about what Ibn Jawzi wrote? Ibn Jawzi wrote in refuting the Hanabila. What about the thousands of scholars who wrote against Ibn Taymiyyah? Why we make it about one individual? For what? He wasn't the only one who wrote against Ibn Taymiyyah. Don't fall into that trick, that trick. Because what they're going to say is you quoting just one sheikh, Abdullah al-Harari, and then they're going to talk about Habashi, and then they're going to say Abash. Forget talking about him. What about the hundreds of thousands of scholars who wrote against Ibn Taymiyyah? What about them? And how they clarified in the time of Ibn Taymiyyah that wrote against him. As-Subki, Ibn Ata'Allah as-Sakandari. Stop promoting individuals. You're destroying the victory of Ahl Sunnah without knowing it. It's not about individuals. Yes, Sheikh Abdullah al-Harari, rahimahullah ta'ala, he wrote against Ibn Taymiyyah, and he wrote many things. Read his books. He's quoting those scholars before him. Go to those original books and show them where the scholars of Ahl Sunnah said that. You don't got to promote your sheikh. Your sheikh don't need you to promote him. He's good at what he does. Rahimahullah. He's good. He did his job. Now you do yours. And don't be a parrot. Because all they're going to do is attack your sheikh and his organization. Let's not even waste our time with that. We have enough proof as Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah that we don't need that. We could still establish the point with our great scholars, all of them who have spoke against the errors of Ibn Taymiyyah, like Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, like all of those great scholars who came after them, after his time. They wrote way before the 14th century, way before that. In the 13th and 12th and 11th and 10th and 9th and 8th, there were scholars. Don't fall for that game. We got to get educated. We can't go from one blind follower to another. We can't do it. And it has nothing to do with denigrating an individual, but that's a trap. Don't fall into it. Don't fall into it. Ahl Sunnah is not an individual. Ahl Sunnah is the whole Jamhur. The majority of the Muslim nation is not about one individual or two or three or four or five individuals. Ahl Sunnah is a group, Jamhur al-Ummah, the majority of the Muslim nation. And one man is not a proof for the whole nation. The nation is a proof for that one man. Don't forget that. Now, with all due respect and veneration for Sayyidi Sheikh Abdullah al-Harari, rahimahullah ta'ala, rahmatin wasiyah. You can tell them that, but better to start learning the correct Aqidah and teaching it, right? Don't waste your time with people who ain't listening. Concentrate on those who want to learn and show them. Show them. You notice what I'm doing with you. I'm not talking about myself. I'm pointing you book after book after book, scholar after scholar after scholar. And the stronger you develop, I'm going to continue to the point where you're going to see it yourself. You don't even need to listen to me no more. You'll be doing the job, but not just refuting others. I'm talking about learning the whole religion, that you need to build communities, to be stronger families, so that Islam comes and does in our community what is intended to do for the world. But we're only going to do that when we learn. We can't do that, blind following and arguing. And no, clarify the truth and keep moving. So I wouldn't suggest you waste your time with those people. I would suggest, I ain't saying don't talk to them. If you got a relationship, talk to them. And, be kind. Speak the truth. But really learn and teach. Learn very well. Know exactly what you're talking about. Know your evidences. Know your resources. Know your references. Know the scholars. Know the books. Know the verses. Know the hadith. And then go teach people. That's what I suggest. There is a Fathul Bari. There is one translation of Fathul Bari is the name of the book. There is one volume translated, and they're working on the second. They may be coming out soon, but the first volume of Fathul Bari is translated in English. I don't know if it's still available, but you might can find it. It is the first volume is translated, but it's like 14 volumes in Arabic, so it's going to be a while for it to be finished. Okay, more. That's it. We finish. No, I'm not offended. I love Sheikh Abdullah, and he did a great work. Don't think I'm offended. I'm just saying you got to understand the climate we're in. And sometimes when you're in the climate, you got to understand how to move in that climate, right? I can talk about Sheikh Abdullah, right? I know about Sheikh Abdullah. I know Sheikh Abdullah well. I know the students of Sheikh Abdullah. I know the teachers that studied with Sheikh Abdullah. I know the great scholars who studied, but that's making it about an individual. If Sheikh Abdullah wasn't existing and he died, rahimahullah ta'ala, that doesn't mean like Islam is not relying on Sheikh Abdullah or anybody else for that matter. But these are notable scholars and learned people who conveyed the creed of Ahl Sunnah, and they were not the only ones. But when you only point to one sheikh and say, this sheikh is, well, what about the others? What about the other great scholars? Why don't you mention them? Why don't you mention their books? Why don't you refer to what they said? There are many scholars who wrote in these issues. Why are you not aware of them? Why are you only talking about one? Right? Many, many, many. And all over the world, not just in the Middle East, not just in Africa, in the subcontinent, in Africa, in Russia. Man, you know how many books are written about Ibn Taymiyyah? Prior to the time of Sheikh Abdullah. Everyone had to deal. He was in the 8th century. Don't you think the Muslims have been dealing with this stuff? They wrote against it. They explained in every century. They explained it. And they put out that fire every century. It's not new. So don't think I'm offended. I'm just explaining to you a trap that you may not be aware of. Because they'll move the discussion to talk about your sheikh, and they won't talk about the discussion at all. They'll just make the discussion about your sheikh and about your organization and about all that other stuff that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So don't fall for it. So don't even do it. We ain't even talking about him. I don't know. What page did we stop on? I'm reading in Arabic, so I don't know. Do you know what page we stopped on?
We stopped on page 72,
Yeah,
facts that are lost in research.
yeah. I'm not reading this book all the way through. I'm just picking certain points that I wanted to discuss before we start the book. This book you'll read all the way through in your 25 books for the year. In fact, do you have the link for that? We got to still work on the other books where we're at now. But if you go to the website, you'll see a link for the 25 books that we're going to read throughout the year. We should have about 6 books that we're up to working on now. So maybe tomorrow I'll put that list out again. If you didn't get those books, inshallah, you can catch up and start reading. We're going to read a lot of books. If we study together, you got to get ready to read, because I don't believe in blind following people. What do I mean blind following? You don't do no research. You just listen to the teacher. My teachers didn't accept that. Listen to me, learn from me, but I'm pointing so you can become, not because you keep saying me, 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 me. What have you become? Right? My teachers didn't like that for me. Right? No, you got to go learn. I want you to know. Don't tell people what I said. What did you discover? What did you learn? What did you research? What do you know? And that's why we do what we do. So you're going to read. I'm not going to sit here and say Imam Amin said. No, don't say Imam Amin said. Here's mentioned here. Here's mentioned here. Imam Amin mentioned this. We found it. We did not found it. He's going to continue to look for it. We found it in this. We researched. The scholar said this. The scholar said this. There's a verse of Quran about this. There's a hadith about this. Like that. It's not about ego tripping. I'm not looking for followers. I'm looking for people to learn. I don't want no followers. I don't want to be nobody's imam, like you follow me and I'm your sheikh. I'm not looking for that. I want you to learn. And then learn and convey the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah properly. That's what I want. And that's far better than having some groupie. Sorry, I can see y'all. I got a little ghetto in me. I don't like groupies. Right? We had another word for them in the dunya. Don't use it. I hate watching people like that. You know, represent what you believe. Stop clinging on to someone else. Learn your knowledge and stand strong for the truth of Islam, the methodology of Islam, which is the methodology of Ahl Sunnah, the Ash'ari, the Maturidiyya, and the Form of Dhahib, and the people of Tasawwuf. But you still got to learn that. Don't just have names. You know, I hate that stuff. Because in analogy, you don't learn. You're a parrot. You know, the Energizer bunny. You got a battery in your back, and you don't know nothing. And we can't afford to be like that. Our religion needs learned people. You don't got to be a scholar. You just got to know your stuff. That's all I want. And I want us to spread that in our communities. That's it. Reading, learning, research, and then some of our people will become great scholars. MashaAllah, we want that. But we want everybody at least to know their basic knowledge, and they can protect themselves from misguidance and deviance. At least that level. And if we get some great scholars, MashaAllah, we want that. And let them do their job. But let's get sincere, number one, because we're sincerely failing. And in all aspects, we need an improvement. In our religious, in our worldly, in our secular, our political, man, we got work to do. We have a lot of work to do. Our youth, our seniors, we got to help them and proper housing and proper health care. Man, we got so much work to do. So we need to get busy, you know? Yes, when there's no COVID, right now the masjid is not working, but we have classes for women and things. Whenever Allah lifts this from us, inshallah, we'll do more. Barakallahu fikum, jazakumullahu khaira. May Allah reward you all. Please keep me. Let me thank you all for your donations for the bike ride, the ride out that we do monthly. Mashallah, yesterday, I can not count the amount of joy that the kids, the youth, and their parents, and this, had on them. Even my family came out and rode with us. Mashallah, my Muslim and non-Muslim family. We had a ball, mashallah, and the children really enjoyed themselves. And inshallah, we gave away 4 bikes. No, excuse me, we gave away 5 bikes. 4 new bikes and 1 used bike. So 5 children who didn't have nice quality bikes, they have them now thanks to your generosity. And may Allah continue to encourage you to do more. Jazakumullahu khaira. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. If you want to go look, I posted on my personal page some of the pictures, some of the videos, and we'll be uploading more. And inshallah, who was that fell? I can't tell you that. It wasn't me. It was another imam, but I can't. You didn't get a picture face, so that goes in the archives of blunders that we laugh at for the next 20 years. Down goes Frazier. No, let me stop. All right, barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Allah.